get ready with me while we talk about all the expenses you have to pay when you are trying to become a doctor. Videos recently, people were like, I didn't realize how much you have to pay to become a doctor. And I mentioned a small fraction of the expenses. So let's talk about the full amount. I'm gonna skip the cost of undergrad, but let's just say, you've been in undergrad for 2 years, you decide you wanna go to med school. What next? So, like when you're going into undergrad, you have to take a standardized exam to get into medical school. That standardized exam is the MCAT, and it is a little bit tricky. It's a little difficult, and it requires a lot of studying. What most people will do is they will do some sort of prep course, some sort of tutoring service. When I did it, I did Kaplan. I honestly don't remember the cost of it back then, but I just looked it up, and the exact course that I did now is $2,700 before taxes. So that is the first big expense that you have to think about. I imagine I paid something similar to that. Oops. So you're taking your prep course, and then you need to register for the MCAT. How much is it to register for the MCAT? It is about $330, and that's hoping you take it once. I was lucky, and I took it once, but a lot of people don't get the score they want. Some people, really want to go to an in-state school, and they take the MCAT again. Some people do prep courses multiple times. So that is just a generalized amount of what it could potentially cost. So once you're happy with your score, then you apply for med school. How much is it to apply for med school? I can't remember the exact cost, and it really does vary so much depending on how many schools you apply to. I think I spent around $2,000. When I applied, this was before COVID, so you were interviewing in person. So anywhere you got an interview, you had to fly in person. Either you had family or friends in the area, you could stay with them, or you had to stay in a hotel. I think I spent another $1,500 on flights and hotels. Now, mind you, as I mentioned, a lot of people don't go through this process just once. A lot of people go through this whole process, and interview season's over, decisions come out, and they haven't gotten into med school. So then they do it again. They incur all those expenses again. There's no refunds. It just kind of is what it is. If you want it bad enough, you do it again, and you just swallow the expenses. Okay, let's say you get into med school. That cost can vary anywhere between, if you go to an in-state school, it'll be cheaper. If you go to a private school, it can be upwards of $70,000 a year just for tuition. That's not including living. That's not including just normal expenses, housing, those kinds of things. So that's a whole other topic. We're not even going to get into the cost of school. But what are some of the known expenses that you have to pay in med school? Step 1, Step 2, residency applications. Step 1 and Step 2 are the first of a 3-part series of board exams you have to take to become, to get your medical license. So Step 1 and Step 2, typically you take during med school. Step 3, usually you take during residency. Some people take it before. I still have not taken it, and that's something I'm about to do soon. So Step 1 and Step 2 cost around $670 each. Along with those, there are, like I said, study banks and practice tests and all these things. I think I spent around $500 on those resources each time. And again, like I said, some people have to take these exams multiple times, and every time you take it, you pay the same expenses, which is very unfortunate. Okay, you passed those exams. Now what? Now it's time to apply for residency. How much does it cost to apply for residency to maybe match and maybe get a job? I can't remember the exact cost, but I spent definitely somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 to get no's, not get my money back, and that's just the name of the game, and you just accept it and move on and be thankful for the yeses you do get. And again, like every step of this process, nothing is guaranteed. You may have to go through this again. Some people have to go through the residency application more than once. So you can double these expenses very quickly and very easily. Thankfully, when I went through residency, we didn't have to pay to travel for interviews because it was all virtual because of COVID. But before that, you had to pay again and fly and travel. I remember I was telling my aunt who's in business, and she was like, so you're telling me you go on a job interview and you pay to go? And I was like, yes, and you possibly don't get it. Like, there's no whining and dining or anything of that sort of being made feel special. Like, you pay your way for everything. Okay, so say you match into residency and it's across the country. You have to figure out how you're gonna afford that move on no salary, and say you have a family, kids, those kinds of things. You just gotta figure it out. It's just the way it works. Okay, you're in residency. Every year you'll have an in-training exam of some sort. Some people will pay for, studying exams for that. Some programs will pay for it, but I'm not gonna include that expense because that can be very variable. But while you're in residency, you do have to take step 3. Step 3 is the last part of the USMLE, United States Medical Licensing Exam, and it is a whopping $975. So I'm getting ready to pay that. Really fun. On top of that, you pay for study materials again, and usually around $400. So you're probably thinking, wow, that's gotta be the end of it. No. When you graduate residency, you have to take your board exams for your specialty. Okay, I'm done getting ready, so I need to wrap this up. Board exams, after you finish residency, specifically for OB, you take your written board exams and then you take your oral board exams a couple of years later. For the written board exams, right after you graduate, it is around $1,500. So what's the total that we're looking at? Assuming you go through this process once, you apply to a normal amount of medical schools, residency spots, we're looking at about $15,000, not including the cost of medical school. So next time you see your doctor, make sure to thank them for their service and their sacrifice.